Thanks, John. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for spending the time with us today. I am Dinesh. I've been in Amazon since 6 years now, and I am really excited today because I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is the total cost of ownership. How many of you, just a quick show of hands, how many of you are currently using Amazon Web Services? Awesome. How many of you deal with total cost of ownership issues or concerns and are sort of the cloud champions within the organizations trying to convince the senior management about TCO? Oh, few. Good. Great. So this talk is for you, for those who really want to take advantage of understanding what is the total cost of ownership when it comes to comparing your on-premises storage infrastructure with the cloud service infrastructure, which is fully redundant and offered as a service. So when I meet, I spend a lot of time talking to lots of customers. I'm on the field most of the time and learning a lot from customers about how they do their TCO studies. And I meet a variety of different people, customers, and it's always interesting to learn what mistakes they have made in their TCO analysis. So one of the type of customers who we typically meet are people who would say, they will compare the TCO of acquisition of the physical hard drives, so cost of getting hard drives, with the cloud service. How many of you have seen such a thing happen? So they on one side of the fence, when they are comparing the cost, they compare hard drives, and the other side, they take what it's going to cost on putting stuff on S3. And so I'm going to talk about why is that a mistake, and how customers should be perceiving TCO. So I'm going to talk about different cost factors involved in calculating TCO when you talk about cloud services. And the second type of customers that I meet today, is that they even though they do a fairly decent job of comparing and getting all the cost factors in there, they miss out on several key elements when it comes to doing the key apples to apples comparison. So those customers, when I talk to them, they say they have done their analysis, but then say, oh, the networking team, I don't deal with them. I don't pay for them. They are a separate thing. Oh, the powering, cooling, oh, that's something separate. I just deal with storage. So I'm going to talk about also, as in what are the different cost factors and how you're going to take into consideration the typical, the typical mistakes that customers make when you actually do your TCO analysis. So with that, with the number of services and the types and the features that Amazon has released, our pricing philosophy has not changed. You pay for what you use. At the end of the month, you get a complete detailed report of how much you have used and how much you are paying for that. And there are no long-term commitments, and there are no long-term commitments required, and there are no upfront costs. So with that, just in that in mind, I want to talk about what you do when you compare TCO. So so it's all about understanding what the systems are providing, the right level of features, and then when you're comparing TCO, it's all about apples and oranges, and you want to compare the right way in the different settings in required. So the first that comes up, I'm going to talk about 5 main takeaways today, so that you can not only go back and really do the TCO analysis correctly and kind of help you understand. And if there are any concerns or questions about Amazon is not cost effective when it comes to cloud storage, please do talk to us. We are extremely interested in learning how you have done your TCO analysis and what are the elements. So we are here. I will be having my contact information, and any of the Amazon employees, please feel free to get in touch with them regarding cloud storage economics. So the first thing that comes to mind, and the typical mistakes that customers make when comparing the TCO of cloud storage is that they don't take into consideration the differences between usable storage, raw storage, allocated storage, and so forth. So understanding your utilization is going to really help a lot. With Amazon Simple Storage Service, which is a highly distributed, highly redundant, distributed object store, you are paying for what you use. You're paying by the gigabyte. And so your economics dramatically changes based on how you are measuring things. So the first thing that comes is, it's around it's understanding the economics. And as I talked about earlier, it's very easy to make mistakes in this scenario. One of the reports from Forrester, which I really like, has been, there are a variety of different studies, but this one report is really the closest I've seen, has done a fairly decent job of connecting all the dots, taking all factors into consideration for 100 terabyte use case. How much it's going to cost to run or deploy 100 terabyte on-premise storage, and how much it will cost in the cloud. So I'm going to talk about some of those numbers as well. In that study, the first thing that comes up is that I talked about earlier. It's very easy to make mistakes. So in this scenario, on the right side, they're essentially just taking raw hard drive, the space that is published by the hard drive vendor, and on the right side, they are essentially taking that same gigabyte or petabyte or 100 terabytes in this case on the side and calculating. And this is a typical mistake that customers make. So the thing to understand here is what does this raw storage mean, and how much you're actually getting, or how much your application storage is when it comes to doing the analysis. So once you're doing, let's say, 1 petabyte of storage on one side, how much you are actually getting on 1 petabyte for your application storage. And that application storage is really the right level to compare with Amazon S3, because you are paying per gigabyte. So let's say 1 petabyte. The first mistake that I typically see when customers are doing TCO analysis is the engineering terabytes or engineering bytes is very different than the sales bytes. How many people have seen that? Like 1 gigabyte is 1024 kilobytes, or 1 petabyte is 1024 terabyte. How many of you have seen such a mistake happen? Few. So that's the first thing which I see, that you have to understand when you see in a petabyte, it adds up very quickly. There are 1 petabyte is 1024 terabytes and not 1,000 terabytes. So even though there is the significant, it's not the number is that significant. This is a pretty important factor that comes in. The second thing that comes in is the usable storage. Even though you're only specifying the amount of hard drive or the hard drive space or the on-premise storage that you're getting might be like 40 terabytes as a published rate by the hard drive vendor, that's not what you are really getting. There are RAID drives, there are formatting, there are partition, storage capacity needed. So the amount of storage is typically 20%, and I'm taking all these highly conservative rates around it. If you have high-end luster-based systems, you might able to get 85% utilization, 85% usable storage. However, typically in on-premise systems, this usable storage is around 50 to 60%. I'm taking 80% over here. So you take that into consideration. The second part is the allocated storage. Allocated storage is really the storage that you have to provision because you cannot really provision storage quickly enough. The amount of capacity planning that you have to do ahead of time, ahead of the curve, in order to stay ahead with your requirement, with your demand. So you have to take into consideration, typically they see into TCO analysis, the allocated storage is around 90%. They say 10% buffer in case they have a big storage need comes up. So you need to take into consideration the storage, allocated storage as well, which is the 90% of capacity planning and the measurement that you have to do. The third is really about the utilization aspects as well, right? Typically in an enterprise storage system, I say 30 to 40% utilization rates. I'm taking into consideration around 70 to 80% in this scenario, so that this is the actual storage that is available to the operating system for the database and so forth. So when you are actually going out of 1 petabyte of storage, your actual operating system storage available to the operating system is much lesser, right? And the last one is really the application storage, which this is the application content, the content of the actual storage that's available to the application. And when you add up all of this, you will see that if you really need 1 petabyte of application storage, you will need at least 1.8 petabytes of additional storage to really get that level of 1 petabyte of storage. In the case of Amazon S3, now 1 petabyte is 1 petabyte. Whatever we saw on the other side. So understanding and doing this apples to apples comparison is extremely important. Usable storage, pre-allocated storage, or allocated storage, understanding the utilization factor of how much you are going to be utilizing over a 3-year period, and then amortizing your cost over a month, collecting all that data in a way that will make sense so that it is right apples to apples comparison with the cloud storage service like Amazon S3. So that's my first takeaway of the day. The second takeaway, which is the most important when it comes to highly distributed redundant data services. Cloud is all about distributed systems. It's utility computing services. You have to understand that the levels of redundancy, the levels of, there are multiple pricing models available today. With Amazon S3, there are 2 different classes of storage available. One is the standard storage, which is essentially the pretty much the first thing that you go with. The second class of storage is what we call the reduced redundancy store. So the first one is, of course, I'm going to talk about in detail about that, but the basic aspect that Bill talked about in his session was that Amazon has multiple availability zones within a single region. Your data is replicated across multiple geographically distributed data centers in order to ensure high reliability, high durability of your data. So things fail all the time, and the engineering excellence of S3 or the operational excellence of S3, the beauty of S3 is the fact that it quickly recovers from when any failure happens. The action it has to take when any failure happens, how it replicates it, how it redistributes your data, how it connects and makes sure that your data is available all the time, or the data is durable all the time. That's the key value of a highly distributed data set. When you are seeing things happen at scale, like around one of the sessions mentioned, around 1 million requests per second happening on Amazon S3. It's a distributed scale. It has to be highly automated in a way so it doesn't get avoided in a way. So there are different things you have to understand when you understand TCO analysis, that the Amazon S3 is designed to provide you 11 nines of durability, which means that if you don't need that much lines of durability, you can switch to reduced redundancy store, which offers you 4 nines of durability and offers you around 33% reduction in your actual TCO analysis. So if the standard storage is around 12 cents a gigabyte per month, 12.5 cents a gigabyte per month, the reduced redundancy store rates are around 9.3 cents a gigabyte per month. So taking into consideration the right levels of durability, the right levels of redundancy is extremely important when you do your TCO analysis. So that's my second takeaway of the day. The third and the most important one, in my opinion, is the fact that you're taking all the fixed cost into consideration. Now, this is one of the fundamental reasons I spend most of my time on understanding the TCO analysis that the customer has made. And they typically miss several of these items when you see and compare your on-premise storage with the highly distributed, redundant, completely self-service, API-driven service. So this one is one of the most important things, taking all factors into consideration when you are comparing your TCO analysis. So there is server hardware, network hardware, there is vendor management software, there are licensing involved for management of hardware, powering, cooling, real estate space, networking, the storage and redundancy, as I mentioned in the earlier thing, resource management software. Taking all that factor into consideration, creating a one-time cost on one side, which is your CapEx, and your operating expenditure on the other side, and then creating a way by which you see that in the cloud, all of this cost is one single price, 12 cents a gigabyte per month. So all of this is included within one single, within that price. You have to take into consideration when you do this apples to apples comparison. And this is the fundamental thing which I see in lots and lots of TCO analysis that they miss. And one of the most important one that they miss is the storage administration costs. And this is not just, this is the personnel administration or the personnel cost. There are networking teams, hardware management teams, storage infrastructure teams, operations staff, people who do procurement, finances, negotiating contracts. All of these are personnel costs which are included in this particular analysis that you have to take into consideration when you do your TCO analysis. And this is hard. And this is difficult because it is very difficult to know what storage, what would be the right amount of storage cost to put in. But these are the things that you need to factor into the consideration so that you have the right apples to apples comparison. In the case of Amazon, you're not managing hardware. All this undifferentiated heavy lifting is managed by Amazon in this case. So you are managing. You're only focusing on what is most important to you in your business and not really worrying about storage and scaling and growth, and you're running out of disk space and so forth. So this is one of the most important things that I see. So coming back to the Forrester case study, and one of the reports which I've seen as kind of in the closest arena of being complete is that they took 10 terabyte of storage. They took every consideration into place. They're understanding how much, what is the full-time employee cost, of how many people are managing the data center of that 100 terabytes. They're taking into consideration redundancy. They're taking into consideration variety of different levels of usable storage as well as raw capacity. They did miss quite a few things. However, it is still one of the most better case studies that I've found, better reports, that I've found in. For 100 terabytes, it's going to cost you around $1 million per year. And this is one of the ways in which you can take into consideration understanding on-premises cost. This is on-premise cost that is around 1 million. How much will it cost to run to deploy 100 terabytes of data in Amazon S3? And that's where they do their analysis. And the second chart really shows the differences between the on-premise and the Amazon S3 storage. They take into consideration monthly cost of cloud storage. They are taking 15 cents a gigabyte per month. Amazon has reduced back to 12 cents a gigabyte per month. They're taking into consideration multiple other networking chart, the bandwidth chart that you would want to have, and so forth. So as you can see, 100 terabytes of data is going to cost you around around 23% of the actual $1 million of storage, or around 25% of what it's going to, 1/4 the cost of running on-premise. When you take into factor all these cost considerations into consideration. So that's my third takeaway, is to really make sure that you're taking all the fixed costs into consideration and managing it effectively. People, ping, power, space, all of it is important to consider when you're comparing a cloud infrastructure as a service with the on-premises software. The fourth takeaway is one of my most favorite ones, in a way that take into consideration the most updated pricing on Amazon's website. Amazon takes into consideration, and Amazon is really the company here who has done a fabulous job of publishing all its pricing on our website for everybody. And this is very important because what happens is when you have 1 petabyte of storage, your actual per unit price is going to be much, much lesser, because your price is tiered in a way. And every per unit price will go even further less as you grow or as your storage grows. So that is very important to understand the pricing constructs, that all the pricing is kind of tiered. So the first terabyte, you have a separate slab, and then as you grow, your per gigabyte actually reduces. And same is with data transfer cost as well. So when you take into consideration 1 petabyte or 100 terabytes of storage, you have to take in that blended rate into consideration. You will see that your 12 cents a gigabyte per month for that is much lesser when your storage is much higher. So as you grow, your per gigabyte storage is going to go low as well. And there are multiple volume discounts available as well. So please talk to our business development managers, our storage experts, and so forth, to really understand how much storage you have, how to do pricing, and work with us in a way so that we can understand how you do your TCO analysis as well. The second one in this particular bullet point is the fact that Amazon is really committed to reduce the storage pricing and overall cloud pricing due to the economies of scale. Because there are multiple use cases, multiple ways in which customers are accessing these services, Amazon has an efficiency model to really drive down our costs and continuously invest in being the most cost-effective cloud platform on the planet. So efficiency, cloud economics really change the way when you work at scale. You see things like 1 trillion objects on S3, or things like massive ecosystem of developers running on AWS and enterprise companies developing on AWS. There is lots of economies of scale, and there is a lot of automation that goes into it. And automation really makes sure that it reduces human errors, as well as the efficiency and the utilization of our servers, our storage systems are much, much higher. As a result, we like to pass on that savings back to the customer. And this is the fundamental reason why Amazon has reduced pricing 19 times in the last 5 years. This is fundamental to our pricing philosophy. How our retail pricing works as well, and from Amazon.com side, is to continuously work hard towards driving efficiency, operational excellence, and making sure that your pricing is continuously reduced. I was talking to one of the CFOs, one of the CIOs of the large enterprise company, who's using Amazon S3 and several of our services effectively and very easy in a large setup. He told me this over a lunch conversation that I'm using all of Amazon, several of Amazon services. It looks so good in front of my CFO that he thinks that I am doing all the cost efficiencies and running, and my teams are totally working towards driving efficiencies, cutting costs and so forth, while I'm doing nothing, but while Amazon is just cutting the pricing, and they see a savings in the next month's bill. And that's fundamental to AWS pricing philosophy, and understanding that massive economies of scale, driving efficiency improvements, allows us to pass on that savings back to the customer. So taking into consideration, the Forrester case study, the report, essentially took some of those pricing back in December 2011. We reduced our pricing even further down, and if you see that around taking a blended rate of 100 terabytes into consideration, also taking into consideration that there is no cost to put data in the cloud. Data transfer costs are zero when you put when you put data in AWS. You take into consideration all of those. That price is actually $195,000 per year for 100 terabyte. So price has further reduced even down. So it's around 20% of the on-premise storage costs when it comes to comparing all the cost scenarios. So also, when you are understanding, doing your TCO analysis, make sure that there are these different services. There are free tiers available to try out your services, as well as there is no charge to do inbound data transfer, as well as so you can put as many gigabytes or terabytes or petabytes of data into the cloud without having to worry about data transfer costs. At the same time, the outbound cost is also tiered. So you need to take into that consideration as well. So as you grow more, your price per unit goes even less. The one most interesting engineering data point is that just like you get charged on your electricity bill or a power bill of around kilowatt hour, so you are charged for kilowatt of hour that you use just on the pay-as-you-go, Amazon S3 charges you on a similar unit. We call it timed byte hours or time storage byte hours. So if you are storing 10 gigabytes for the first 15 days of the month, and then for the next 15 days of the month, you're storing 15 gigabytes, your actual cost is much more lesser than because you are averaged out. We are essentially taking by every single hour, understanding how much average bytes you have, and then based on that, we calculate actual pricing. So as you grow, you're again paying as you go, your price is actually reduced as well. So if you know that you want 100 terabytes of storage within this whole month, by the time you're actually reaching 100 terabytes during that month, your price is going to be much more lesser. So take into consideration your per gigabyte rate is going to be much more lesser because it's averaged out in a way as you put more data in the cloud. The most important thing about the cloud is when you turn off, you actually stop paying for it. So if you can build out the optimization strategies and you actually see recurring savings as early as your next month's bill. I was talking to one of the developers. He built a small caching service on top of S3, which reduced the number of requests that it makes to S3, which reduced the further cost by 20%. And this is really cool because individual developers have the power to make significant contribution in terms of TCO savings by implementing the right optimization architectures or the right strategies right away. This does not happen in the case of on-premises infrastructure where you have already paid for, installed, configured, procured all that hardware. No matter how much optimization you do, you have already paid for that infrastructure. Here, you have an opportunity to really make sure that every single employee within the company, if they build and optimize their storage or application storage, they will reduce the overall charge. And they will pay less per gigabyte over that month, and then they will get even further savings. So this is the fourth data point which I wanted to bring up, as in leveraging the updated pricing cuts that Amazon does. 19 price cuts in the last 5 years, and Amazon is continuing to innovate in that space so that it further reduces the pricing. And you see recurring savings in your next month's bill, as early as your next month's bill. So that is fundamental to the TCO pricing philosophy. The last but not the least, one of the most important point is really doing the apples to apples comparison in the right way. These intangible costs, understanding, taking a very good close look at what you get as the part of the complete complete pricing or the complete service. What do you get as is very important to understand. The first one is around security. Understanding that Amazon is PCI DSS level 1 compliant. Even though you're not running credit card workloads on Amazon's data center, you still get the same level of security. And there is no extra price for that. Amazon is committed to build that highly secure, highly distributed environment. So in order to really understand and do the right TCO analysis, all these levels where companies spend tons of money in order to really get the right secure infrastructure, it's extremely important to take into this consideration as well. Reduce time to market. Now this one is my most favorite, because when I talk to folks like Netflix and others, and then because they don't have to worry about managing, procuring data centers and their space and so forth, you have an ability to release your software much more quicker. So they, in case of Netflix, which runs their entire infrastructure on Amazon Web Services, they have the power to release, and they said in one of their keynotes that they are releasing 8 months ahead of schedule of what they have done. That is 8 months of additional revenue that they are getting because of releasing things faster and having a competitive advantage over others. And this is fundamentally important because you can get started very quickly in the cloud. The cost of experimentation is extremely low. Cost of failure is extremely low. So you go quickly, get started, try it out. If it doesn't work out, you can walk away with it. And that's how the pricing, how the cloud services work in general. So reduced time to market is very important, giving you indirect cost savings or indirect revenue in this way. Opportunity cost. This is also very important. And when I talk to lots of customers, in an aggregate, they will feel when they move large amounts of data and large amounts of compute to the AWS cloud, they see that the balance sheets have really not changed much. But really what has happened behind the scenes is these large amounts of, a large number of people are using or are focusing on their domain problems. They don't want to be a storage company. They want to be focusing on their domain problems, whether it is media and entertainment industry, or a financial services industry, or government and so forth. They want to focus on being best at what they do rather than really worrying about it. So what happens in this scenario is that lots of teams are moved to make a business impact rather than worrying about infrastructure, racking, stacking servers and so forth. So opportunity cost is extremely important, and so is ability to focus on their business, on their domain is extremely important as well. Giving you an opportunity to work on the problems that actually help, that your customers are really looking to solve. You have an ability to not worry about these essentially this heavy lifting of managing and operating data centers. So it gives you an enormous benefits around it. So in summary, when you are really comparing your TCO analysis, you have to really look at ROI. You have to take into consideration all these intangible costs or intangible cost savings that you get, all these intangible benefits that you get, and then also take into consideration all these factors that I just talked about. So in retrospect, I wanted to talk about, these are the 5 main things which I feel are the most important things in your consider. Just to wrap up, understanding the difference between usable storage, raw storage, allocated storage, and how much application storage is actually going to get when you buy a 1 petabyte of storage, right? And then that's what you use to compare with S3. The second is taking into consideration the redundancy levels the right levels of storage, the right levels, and if you don't need 11 nines of durability, go ahead and choose the reduced redundancy store and make sure, and then you do your TCO analysis so you get your right bang for the buck. As well as making sure that you have the fixed cost into consideration, the people, the power, the real estate, data center costs, and so forth. And so forth. So there are multiple things that you need to take into consideration in this scenario. And there is a lot of different materials available. We are going to release multiple white papers. There are already several white papers available on our economics center. Just like the security center, AWS Economics Center has lots of ways in which this talks about different case studies and how different services, how different customers are saving money in different ways. So I highly recommend you to leverage AWS at amazon.com/economics. So just to wrap up, AWS, while the number of services have dramatically increased in the last 5 years, our pricing philosophy is the same. You pay for what you use. You have an ability to turn it off and save and optimize. You pay per less when you're actually use more things you are using. There are tiered pricing. You pay even less as AWS grows because and drive in that efficiencies, that improvement, and the optimizations that AWS puts in. Then we pass that savings back to the customer. And then there are reserved pricing and other options available as well. So please contact us. And I would love to connect with you for any TCO analysis and where you find that AWS is not cost effective when you compare it with on-premise. This is something that I aggressively focus on. So I would love to talk to you later on during the talk. Thank you very, very much for listening.